That's it. That was Licorice Alive. My Licorice, all alive, playing Exactly Like You. That was another classic of the American jazz 20th century. It was written in the darkest days of the Depression. I think it was in 1930. By an eminent songwriting duo of that period, none other than Dorothy Fields and Jimmy McHugh. And that was also the songwriting team that brought you another important 20th century standard, On the Sunny Side of the Street, both Exactly Like You and On the Sunny Side of the Street were written in the depths of the American Depression. People were hurling themselves out of buildings. The economy was in a free fall, and people were in a state of absolute panic. And so it's almost as if both of these tunes, Exactly Like You and On the Sunny Side of the Street, were trying to haul the nation out of its economic and emotional funk. And it's really important, I guess, not to forget how important popular music was in elevating the national mood during those most challenging times. So a little about this songwriting duo. Dorothy Fields came from a rather, I guess, distinguished show business pedigree. She was the daughter of Lou Fields, of the famous vaudeville act Weber and Fields, and that's when vaudeville mattered. And I believe Weber and Fields was the basis for the Neil Simon comedy, The Sunshine Boys. And anyway, Dorothy Fields is one of the first of the lady songwriters to break through in that difficult arena known as Tin Pan Alley, and she was quite prolific. And she also was the driving force, and she also wrote the lyrics for the timeless musical Annie Get Your Gun. So her feminism and advocacy took some very entertaining and timely turns back in those early days. Jimmy McHugh, her partner, was a piano player and a song plugger from Boston. What was a song plugger? Well, in those days, guys would just get in front of those little upright pianos and plug the songs. They were pitchmen. They would sell them, and they were songwriters too. So that's who Jimmy McHugh was. And Exactly Like You is, like I said earlier, and as I mentioned in last week's podcast when I talked about Bye Bye Blackbird, it was one of those tunes that really spanned the best part of the 20th century. Anybody and everybody with vocal cords recorded that tune. And for those instrumentalists, there were also some very important touchstone recordings. Let's mention, of course, the clarinet clairvoyant, Benny Goodman, the king of swing. He recorded that tune with his partner in crime, Lionel Hampton, and another modern version. Well, when I say modern, I don't mean contemporary. I mean modern, post-World War II. There's a fantastic version that Dizzy Gillespie and Stan Getz performed. It's lyrical, it's hip, and it's understated. And it is to be found on the little jazz mini classic Diz and Getz. Also, Scott Hamilton, who is a contemporary player, he did a nice recording of it. Anyway, for the jazz improviser, it is really one of those tunes that begs you to play it. Exactly Like You, it offers a veritable feast of dominant chords and tritone substitutions to chew on. So my little mini version, 1.5 courses of improv, I hope you dug it. Okay, here we are, folks. I'm here. Welcome to this milestone episode number 25 of Rebel Without Applause. As always, I am coming to you live from my movie studio apartment right here in the Wood of the Holly. Under the sign, I can see it from my little window here. And as always, I'm trying to break it down truth-wise, jazz-wise, a little funny-wise. And every week it hits me the same challenge. What the hell am I going to talk about? And sometimes I panic. I just sit in front of my screen. trying to coax something cogent out of my brain to fill the airwaves with my next podcast. What do? I watch the news cycle. I devour the Huffington Post and MSNBC and any other outlet. And I'm hopeful that surely the PVP, and for those of you that are a new arrival to this podcast, the PVP stands for Putin's vice president, that being the billionaire brat boy. I watch that news cycle, and I can rest confident that surely the PVP will offer up something to comment about. What else? I think about the movies I saw, the books I read, whatever. Still, the unholy terror of the blank page, the empty space, that blank computer screen, hoping that the sheer emptiness, the monochromatic whiteness of it will suck a fresh idea out of my lazy head. So for the purposes of 25, I'm going to start simply. I'm going to open my eyes. What do I see? I'm peering out my window, and the sky, it's almost a painful blue. The air is clean and moist. And last week, the rains finally came, and when they did, it was with a fury. And so, just a few short weeks after the fires left huge swaths of our hills and homes, a blackened moonscape, the seasons have changed. Within a week, a pair of storms roared out of the Bering Sea. They gained momentum across the North Pacific and pummeled Cali with snow, rain, and wind. So now, with a crown of feathered whiteness on the San Gabriel and Bernardino Mountains that overlook our coastal plain, the threat of fire is no more. But a new scourge awaits: the mud. Untold tons of it, a nasty slurry of rock, soot, and wreckage waiting for rains to lubricate and the claws of gravity to hurl it down upon the unlucky few. So, as it always does, the cycle of nature continues, and we puny humans can only watch and wait, and if we're lucky, escape. And if it ain't the fire, it could be the rain and the mud. If not those twin scourges, the seismic forces beneath us, the ever-grinding tectonic plates could scratch forward and send us mere mortals scurrying for cover. If not the earthquakes, maybe a stray bullet from a mass murderer, or a drunk driver, or a clogged artery, or a mutant bacteria, or an enraged ex, or the dreaded big sea which lies there waiting in the bushes. Okay. All right. Sorry, I got I'm getting a tad morbid. I actually, when I opened the little panel into the backwater of my brain, I was hoping for something funny and amusing. Instead, that dark poet within poked his sullen face out of my brainy backwaters. Sorry, folks. Probably not what you wanted from a podcast. Surely you wanted levity and light and inspiration, and all you got was mortality. My bad. Oh, well. It had to come out. It did. And now I'm happy again. Actually, I was happy anyway. In spite of all the tragedy and idiocy that surrounds us, my life, with all its risk and impermanence, is fucking fantastic. Even though almost none of my professional dreams have come true and my personal life is precarious, I am somehow, in spite of it all, strangely, almost insanely and illogically happy. Why? Who the hell knows? It really doesn't matter. I'll just take the gift and try not to worry about it. Okay. Conversation with self. Conversation with self. Let's stop with the navel staring. No more of the psychoanalytic pseudotherapy gunk. That's one way to get miserable. The only therapy I really like is Thai massage therapy. And as a matter of fact, I dated a Thai masseuse. Yeah, what started out with a happy ending turned out to be just the beginning. So, I started with opening my eyes. Just look outside, see the big blue. Reminder to self, Bill, keep swimming, keep paddling, keep surfing. Those winter swells will be coming, and once the water clears and the bacteria disperses from the last rainstorms, those classic winter breaks will come alive. Rincon, C Street, County Line, the PV Cove, and farther south, yes, there's Swami and Cardiff and North County Diego. They'll all be offering glaciated aquatic rides of freezing joy. Life is good. And soon the surf will be too. So, what else? Aha, of course. And so, as it does for all us mortals mere, the end came quietly for 41 last week. So maybe it's time to reflect on his life, that being H.W. or Big Daddy Bush. First off, let's say... the guy definitely broke the record for most funerals for one life. I mean, you'd think he led actually more than one existence. Maybe he was a cat with 9 lives, and each life, the personal, the political, the Texan, the New Englander, had to be laid to rest separately. Fortunately, for 41, he's got the rest of eternity to recover from all the travel and those boring ceremonies. And if there is an afterlife, if he was somehow watching from above, I'm sure he got great pleasure watching the PVP. You know who that is, Putin's vice president. By that I mean the billionaire brat boy. I'm sure 41 got tremendous pleasure from up above watching him sit there and steam at his funeral, his arms crossed in a big harumph. I'll tell you, there were more cold shoulders in that cathedral than at a pajama party in the Arctic Circle. Of course, I have to say, I have no idea if they have pajamas in the Arctic Circle or if they even have parties there. But if they do, I'm sure their shoulders get really cold with all the rest of their body parts. You know, we're almost 2 years into this reign of psycho-terror and imbecility and incompetence. And for a merchant of mirth, such as I am, the comedy fruit that he offers is so frigging low. I mean, you don't have to reach for it. It's staring you right in the face. But of course, when the fruit is low and so easy to pluck, it loses taste. The sweetness and bitterness that so dazzled the palate at the first, it becomes dull, and after a while boring, and now, frankly, tasteless. And that, I think, is the effect this gutter-snipe goofball has had on us. He ain't funny anymore. He's committed the biggest sin for a reality store. He's a flat-out fucking bore. He is just a black hole of all-consuming nothingness. So as his final chapter begins, as Mueller moves his chess pieces inexorably and inevitably around him, checkmate is only a few moves away. And what is he? He's just a lonely guy in his bunker waiting for the end. How and in what form that end will finally come, I'm not sure. It may be with an impeachment or a resignation. He may succumb to the psychic pressure and have a stroke or a heart attack. Who knows? But checkmate is surely coming. And as I peer into the smoky center of my crystal ball projecting into his dim political future, what do I see? I see a perp walk. I see a courtroom. I see a mugshot. I see a prison. No, wait. Wait, the myths are swirling. I see something else, something more ancient. I see Iago, the villain par excellence from Shakespeare's Othello. It's the final scene. It's Act 5. And the PVP, I mean Iago, I mean the billionaire brat boy. He's being hoisted in a steel cage for all the infuriated Venetians to see as Othello, the shattered Moor, totally destroyed, distracted, and ready at the brink of his own self-suicide. He steps forward and looks at Iago, And he asks, why hath you ensnared me, body and soul? For what purpose? For what reason? And Iago smirks and smiles and says, demand me nothing. What you know, you know. From this time forth, I never will speak word. And so for Iago, it was silence. And I'll look again into my little crystal ball of fantasy and future as Iago dissolves into the mist. And now wait, there's a new image. I see, oh, there he is with fedora and overcoat. I see Edward G. Robinson in the last scene from the Warner Brothers gangster classic Little Caesar. Robinson, or is it the billionaire brat boy? He's lying there in the gutter, having been fatally perforated by a dedicated police sergeant. Lying there in a pool of his own blood, he cries, Mother of mercy, is this the end of Rico? And so, as it does for all crime bosses, the end usually comes quickly with just a mini moment of self-awareness, and then they're gone. They dissolve into a malignant nothingness, not unlike the Wicked Witch and the Wizard of Oz, those avatars of evil and ego, bombast and brutality. When their moment comes, they just dissolve in front of us until all that's left is just a small puddle of acrid-smelling pus. Then a street cleaner mops that pus away, and the stage is cleared for the next clown to strut upon, and so it goes. By the way, folks, a little note on Little Caesar, great Warner Brothers classic. It pretty much became the template for all those rise and fall gangster movies. It was directed by one of the underrated greats of all time, that being Mervyn LeRoy. Underrated, he's not in the absolute upper pantheon of Hollywood directors, but if you want to see some great movies that he directed, check out 5 Star Final, a great newspaper story. There's the classic I Was a Fugitive from a Chain Gang with Paul Muni. And anyway, Mervyn LeRoy was one of the greats. And by the way, here's a little personal caveat to that. He was a close pal of my granddaddy, Ben. And in fact, that he was Mervyn LeRoy, he who had directed Little Caesar. He came to my bar mitzvah so many decades ago. And at that time, I have to say, I had no idea or interest in who he was. He was just another elder, an older guy sitting at a table with a cigar next to my grandfather. I wish I did know who he was. I can say this, knowing what I know now, if I knew it then, I would have been his willing slave, intern, gopher, whatever. Anyway, back to 41, back to Herbert Walker. Much has been said about his life. Yeah, he was, by all estimates, a great guy, funny and generous of spirit. He never really took himself too seriously. He was gutsy when he had to be, ruthless when needed, and gracious when it was his turn to get his ass kicked. See, Elder Bush, lost way more elections than he ever won. Notably, he lost for the Senate twice. First to LBJ's boy, Ralph Yarborough. And by the way, a little side detour, LBJ is not LeBron James, it's Lyndon Baines Johnson. And if you want to learn more about Lyndon, check out my screenplay, Ballot Box 13. An email will get you a PDF copy, and that script tells the tale of how young Lyndon got to the Senate in 48. Out of 1 million votes cast, it came down to 87 votes in one box. But there I go. I'm lost in the weeds. I'm wandering again. Getting lost, disoriented in the historical labyrinth. Where was I? Oh, yes. 41. Bush. He lost to Ralph Yarborough in 1964. Now, Yarborough was something rarely seen in Texas anymore. He was a big-time flaming liberal. As senator, Yarborough defied his Southern roots and voted for the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act in the early 60s. And he was, for sure, I think maybe with the conspicuous exception of Ann Richards, maybe one of the last big-time liberal Dems to hold office in Texas. So Yarborough smacks 41 around in 64, and then 41 tries again in 1970, and then a South Texas congressman does the same. Yep, he kicks his ass, that being Lloyd Benson, which made Herbert Walker a two-time loser for the Senate. Of course, Bush did get a big dose of revenge when he defeated Michael Dukakis, and good old Lloyd was Dukakis' running mate in '88. But back in 1970, after losing to Yarborough and Benson, the elder Bush was shit out of luck and on a political ticket to nowhere, but somehow, some way, in some fashion, his guardian angel appeared out of the Texas night in the form of one Dickie of the Tricky. Yep, that was Richard Milhouse Nixon, who plucked him out of political purgatory and made him ambassador to the UN and then chairman of the Republican National Committee. And from then on, his path was cleared to the political big time. The rest of his story is familiar. No need for me to review that here. After serving as Ronnie's understudy for 8 years, the big chance finally came, and Big Daddy Bush knew what he had to do. He pulled out the knives and made Slovakia out of that Greek governor from Massachusetts. What's his name? The one with the famous actress for a sister. That's right, Michael D. And then 4 years later, after he won wars and watched empires and walls collapse, 41 got punched in the nose by his future best friend, that guy from Arkansas. What's his name? Bill somebody. He was married, was 41, to his Barbara for like forever. And from what I hear, he never kissed another woman, though I did hear he groped a few. But after you're 85 or so, I think you should get a pass for inappropriate ass groping. I think that should be built into the Me Too movement. Call it the Me Too caveat. If you get there past mid-85, you're entitled to a few mulligans. But what the hell? Final thoughts on 41. He was breezy, and he was funny, and he could take a joke, unlike the current occupant. Ask Dana Carvey. And unlike the current occupant, he could handle criticism. Ask Maureen Dowd, or better yet, recommendation here, read her Remembrance in the New York Times, published last week. Really good. So, we are now, folks, coming up fast on the new year. The wheel keeps turning. It waits for no one. Time, like a picket fence, keeps dashing by. The older I get, the faster those pickets scream by in a white blur. And I am coming to what feels, I think, like the conclusion of Season 1 of Rebel Without Applause, the podcast experiment. And I wanted to extend, if you got this far, there's some real dedicated listeners out there. Please, thank you so much for hanging with me. If you folks ever want to hear me live, here's my big ask. Call your local comedy club. Ask for me, Bill Kalmanson, a Rebel Without Applause. If you're in L.A., that could be the Comedy Store. It could be the Laugh Factory. It could even be the Improv. That's my way to stir the pot. Maybe this little exercise will, light a spark under my little nightclub career. But as for this podcast experiment, I think I'm going to pick this up on the other side of the new year. Unless something happens and I need to talk about it, then I'm not going to censor myself. I'm just going to come right back at you with my next thought. But either way, I hope you dug. And one thing I've learned, one core truth that I've said before, but that has come out of this exercise, is that my need to express far outweighs anybody's interest in hearing me. So if you did, I am in your debt. So it's time for me to check on out of here. Personal matters beckon. So for the time being, I'll be skipping the light fantastic into the new year. Until then, goodbye, adios, and adieu.